And good morning, everybody. Happy Monday, January 10th out there. And we welcome to the Breakfast Runs with me, your host, JP Warren. And I think I got let me see what I got. Monday, January 10th out there. And we welcome to the Breakfast Runs with me, your host, JP. Little background noise right there. That just means that means we're live. Well, technical difficulties, but it's part of the game. So I want to welcome everyone right now. And first off, before we introduce our guests, I just want to throw out a couple things right now. Check out Energy Crew podcast. I just released one with Matt Martin, the geoscience manager over at Aventive, where we sat down for about 2 hours, split a bottle of wine, and discussed everything from barbecue to career path to building a team, working with good people, brisket, and all that. And then what else? What else we got? Tomorrow we're going to Midland for the first official crew club event. Looking forward to that. We're going to get together before the AED Operators Forum, and then the following day on Wednesday. So if you're an operator in the Midland area, reach out to me. It's jpwarren@connectioncrew.com, and we'll sure to get you in the mix. What else? Tomorrow at 10:15, I got Texas Railroad Commissioner candidate Sarah Stogner coming on. We're doing a 10:15 live, kind of just a general discussion. Open up if anyone has any questions or areas of concern they want to bring up with her. Tune in, and it's going to be on the same platforms. It's going to be on the Crew Tube. I just changed the name of the YouTube channel to Crew Tube. Check that out, as well as it's on LinkedIn as well. Man, this Texas Railroad Commission campaign has definitely been entertaining and important. It's extremely important what's going on. So be sure to tune in and ask your questions. And then on Wednesday at 9 a.m., I got Casey Zachary, my buddy from Summit Petroleum, coming on, the drilling superintendent. So that should be a good conversation. And I think that's it. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce our guest, a good buddy of mine, Oklahoma boy, Max Gagliardi, and he is going to be popping in right now. What's going on, Max? Oh, Max, but before I continue with this, I'm going to have to plug the sponsor of this show, the Royal Completion Tool Cats. And of course, I got to do the video, the commercial for that. So here we go. So again, this I want to thank Royal Completion Tools for sponsoring this good group of people over there. Check them out. They've sponsored the show when it first came out, and they've been great supporters and just a good group of people over there. So here's the commercial. Let's get this kicked off, Max, and say hello to a couple of people out there, wherever they're tuning in from, and then we'll start our conversation, man. So let's go. Here we go.
To all you completion engineers, company men, and consultants out there, are you sick and tired of losing sleep over frac plugs not getting to depth, not holding pressure, or not drilling out properly? Or maybe you aren't getting the best quality and service from the bigs. Well, stop burning the midnight oil and rest at ease while using Royal Frac Plugs, the most reliable and efficient frac plug on the market. Start your successful completions today by getting in touch with Royal Completion Tools. You can contact them via www.royalcompletiontools.com, sales@royalcts.com, or via LinkedIn. Contact them today to check out some of the best frac plugs out there.
All right, that's it. So let's see where everyone's tuning in from today. We got old Keith, my boy Keith Stelter. I wonder how he's. Keith, I haven't talked to you in a while, man. We got to catch up, buddy. He's watching from Odessa, Texas. Happy Monday to you, Keith, and thanks for tuning in. And we got Richard Welch for Congress, Tomball, Texas. Good morning to you, Richard. Hope you had a good weekend. So pretty much what we're going to do, Max and I, we kind of have a couple bullet points to talk about today. Max, I'm going to have you introduce yourself here shortly, but Max is the partner and co-founder of Ancova, the Talk Energy podcast host, where he's getting some great guests, some great content, and you're kind of filling in you're kind of putting a good bridge between kind of the energy industry, what's going on out there, and also kind of taking the macro view of things, which I dig. So let's see who else is tuning in. We got Uptown Houston. Let's get this Uptown Houston. I'm digging that. That's a place you don't hear about. Brandon Webb. Good morning from Houston, Texas. Good morning, Brandon. How you doing, buddy? Keith, that's very sweet to hear. We got Michael tuning in from Pearland. So thanks for tuning in, everyone, on this morning. Be sure to continue. Okay. Hey, a little John Refro from Memorial City. We got James from Oklahoma City. What's going on, James? Max, do you know James by any chance?
Looks familiar, James. What's up?
So next trip I go up there, we gotta get together. He's a legit dude. So, and another Oklahoma boy, Bryson Varner. Yes, ye. Have you seen his latest video with he's from the Oscar Mayer Wiener truck? Good stuff, man. He always does good stuff. Sean White, good morning. Sean from Montgomery, Texas. It's getting kind of the weather's kind of changing around these parts. How's it up in Oklahoma?
It's cold. It's cold. It's 20 this morning. It'll be in the 50s today though, so it's warming up. There's Cole. What's up, Cole?
What's up, Cole from Midland? So Max, first off, thanks for coming on this morning. And, I'm gonna have you kind of give a little background kind of on you, your company, and kind of all that fun stuff. I'm happy to have you on because what I feel like is you've been more vocal on the social media platforms on being an advocate for not just the oil and gas industry, but energy in general, that and how it relates. And obviously you've gone down, and I do want to discuss Bitcoin because Bitcoin is not something that I think that, and I had a conversation with David Little. I had a podcast with him that's not out yet about kind of what Bitcoin is. And I think I'm understanding a little bit more. And I think I'm buying into kind of the concept and kind of the whole theory. But I mean, you've been a huge advocate of Bitcoin as well, and also how it ties to energy. So we're going to get into all that fun stuff here in a little bit. But Max, why don't you kind of start us off and kind of introduce yourself, kind of give us a little background, introduce your company and all that stuff. And we'll just go from there. I want to talk about kind of supply chain issues, what's going on in EU, and yeah, kind of the Bitcoin drop that's happened pretty recently. So let's do that and obviously people tuning in right now, if you have any questions during this, chime in and we'll just kind of take those as they come. Does that sound good, Max?
Yeah, sounds great.
All right, so go ahead. Kick us off.
Thanks for having me on. I'm enjoying what you're doing here. I've been watching you grow, man. You've been just cranking out an absolute ton of content lately since you started with the Energy Cruise stuff, man. I mean, you're just a machine. I don't know how many episodes a week you're putting out or what you're doing, but man, you were just doing a bunch of stuff and I love it. So real quick, because I mean, I know how it is. It's a grind and you're doing a lot of it. So you're doing good work. Real quick on me, I'm Max Gagliardi. I'm co-founder of the Ancova group of companies. We started I also do the Talk Energy podcast, which you mentioned. And you can check that out at talk.energy is the website, or subscribe on YouTube or follow on the podcast app. It's the easiest way to get there. Ancova started in 2014. Prior to this, we worked at larger E&P companies. So my background, everybody thinks of me as like a midstream guy, and I have a lot of that experience and have worked in that space, but I've always been on the E&P side. So started out my career did a little bit of midstream kind of right out the gate. And then I went quickly into Chesapeake Energy and was there during part of the heyday, drilling a bunch of wells. And our group was really just making sure that all the wells were getting connected, making sure that all the production that was online was flowing. So if wells were down or there's pressure issues, we were helping with that. And then it was also negotiating all the new agreements, whether that be midstream for the oil sales, whether that be for NGLs or residue takeaway. So really kind of everything at the intersection of producing energy or producing oil and gas specifically, and then monetizing that. And then in 2014 left and went over and did a short stint with the American Energy Partners when they were doing that, and then left at the back half of 14 and started Ancova with the partner Mark Edge, who was the vice president of commercial at Chesapeake for 15 years.
Real quick, going from Chesapeake during its heyday, which I've heard, I mean, James was over there as well, but going from Chesapeake during its heyday when it was just unbelievable, then going to AEP, American Energy Partners, what was kind of the mindset, or the spark that kind of led you over to kind of taking that bet on yourself and pursuing the entrepreneurship role? I mean, that's kind of definitely a risky, anxiety-filled decision. Believe me, I know now. Right. I mean, tell me about that.
Yeah, so when I was at Chesapeake, it was just this amazing opportunity, and people, quite frankly, they don't believe the resume. Like, I get people on social media trolling me all the time, being like, there's no way that you did these things or that. And part of it's my partner's resume, Mark. I mean, he was there for 15 years, so he got to ride the wave from, I think he tells the story when he started, there was 8 or 9 rigs, and he thought, there's no possible way that we could ever get busier than this. This is crazy. And then it went to, I think 165, 170 rigs at the peak of activity. And put it into perspective, just in the area I was working, which was kind of we call it the Mid-Continent District. We had about 65 rigs going at the height, and that was Oklahoma, Texas Panhandle, and a little bit of southern Kansas. And I think at that time, our area that I was working, the part that we were responsible for, would have been the second largest driller in the country. Chesapeake was the first largest. Just that subset would have been the second largest.
Okay.
So it was just an incredible amount of activity at that time. I mean, connecting hundreds of wells. Just on my drill schedule, I probably had, I think the most I ever got up to was like 30 lines that I was, 30 rigs that I was responsible for. There was 3 reps in our group handling the 60 plus rigs. And so it was just a drinking from a fire hose as a 20.
Time. You don't hear about that anymore.
No, as an early 20 something, what you didn't realize, number one, was how lucky you were being in that position to be able to learn that kind of stuff. And then the other thing you didn't realize was that how unique that was. That, I mean, I don't know if there'll ever be a time, maybe there will be in the future where you've got companies that are that active, but the chance to being able to see that. And we did all kinds of crazy things. I mean, we had our own midstream affiliate. So we were doing third-party midstream deals, building pipelines, compressor stations. We were doing the affiliate stuff. We also had a bunch of arm's length third parties that we were dealing with. Just in those couple of years, we built, 400 million a day of cryo plants, 2 big cryo plants. We then ended up selling those and getting to do a full sales process in a data room where we flipped those plants. And that got to go through that whole process. We, connected all those wells, did downstream deals, did NGL deals, oil gathering deals. So just got to do like all this stuff in a really compressed period of time and learn a lot of different, what I would call like a niche part of the business. And being somebody with like a business background, I didn't know what I wanted to do in the oil and gas industry. So it's like, you could be in land, you could be in finance, you could be in sales, you could be in, and there's only so many things as like a business background person, what you can be in. And I truly feel like I was very fortunate and lucky to just get put into something that I loved doing, that was really interesting to me and that I was passionate about. I mean, there's so much in that kind of commercial space where you have to know the engineering side because it's technical. You have to know the upstream side because you're dealing with production engineers and drilling engineers. You have to know the business and, commercial side, the finance and accounting when you sell the product and understanding how to calculate that. I mean, one of the hardest things we used to have to do was, corporate would come and say, hey, we need to predict our pricing for the next quarter. And, when you have thousands of wells, just that exercise alone, having to understand all the different things that goes into making money. So what I always joke is like, all this whole business, all these different disciplines, geology, engineering, land, all this stuff. And then I felt like when it comes to time to make the money, it's a very marginalized piece of our business for whatever reason. Like if you look at like a sales deck for like somebody selling an E&P asset, you may have 200 slides and then there's like 1 slide or 2 slides on midstream and marketing. And I'm always joking. I'm like, this is how the money is made. So I didn't realize at the time how lucky I was. And I also didn't realize how valuable that skill set was. And so when we jumped to AEP, when I jumped over there, it was pretty easy. I mean, we had Aubrey and revolutionary guy and just was innovative and, at the forefront of everything in the shale revolution. And I'm not saying Aubrey did everything perfect. He was a guy that I learned a lot from, sometimes learned what not to do as well as what to do.
Which is still important.
It's still important. And I learned a lot of leadership qualities from him. And so when he left and the new management came in, I spent some time under the new management. I actually got to be part of the sort of transition team that they did when they implemented a lot of new stuff. So I got to do the big corporate thing and see, they brought the Bobs in and reorganized. And I got to be part of that.
What do you say you do here?
Yeah, right. So I got to see some of that big corporate stuff, but what I knew was that the company's culture was changing, and that's not something controversial to say. They were outwardly admitting it, and I like the old culture. And so seeing what AEP was doing and building something, I went over there for a while and won't belabor that experience. I mean, it was, those guys bought like billions of dollars of assets at $100-something oil, and then it dropped to $20 or $30 oil or whatever it dropped to. So it was a challenging time in that short stint that I was there, but. Long story short, I ended up leaving there in like the fall of 14 and then thought I was just going to go take another job somewhere. I was doing some got really lucky and picked up some consulting work and was working with mainly like small and mid-sized kind of private equity backed teams and helping them do all the things I just talked about that they didn't have that on staff, and then partnered with Mark and he brought like a wealth of experience and connections. And then we kind of joke around. We sort of had a company before we knew we had a company because we looked up and we're like, we need to get help with billing and accounting and invoicing and all this stuff because we just started getting work coming in. And I think we were just fortunate, even though it was this huge downturn. And I said this before too. It's like when we started, I had no kids and was married with no kids, and oil was like $85. And then 6 months in, oil was $30 and I had a kid on the way and it was a highly stressful time, but it ended up working out great. I mean, there was this huge move of private investment into the space, a lot of new E&P companies getting funded through private equity.
Yep.
And that was a lot of our bread and butter clients. And then we built a reputation of did some really big midstream deals and joint ventures early on, and that had a lot of success. A lot of that was luck and timing, and did those on behalf of our clients, helped them negotiate those from an advisory perspective. And then in 2016, started our physical marketing business. And there, what we saw in that niche is that the marketing space, we just felt like was kind of broken. A lot of lack of transparency, a lot of groups that were out there just wanted to buy the product, didn't want to do much else on the service side. And we felt like, look, when you go to sell your gas or oil, just a little bit of the margin is being made there. The rest of the margin is all that stuff in between, all the midstream contracts and all these different things that you can negotiate. Most marketers were focused on just, hey, I can get you a couple pennies here or there. And it wasn't really that transparent. And so we hired a lot of the staff from Chesapeake that we'd worked with. They were marketing, for our VP of marketing. She was marketing 4 BCFs a day. So she had this huge breadth of experience, and then came in and gave people kind of that white glove internal, like what an internal marketing group would look like, but bringing that to the small company. And so today, fast forward, we've got, just in those 2 companies, I think around 16 employees, and it's all been bootstrapped. We did have a midstream company that we started in 2018, and that entity is still there. We raised some money. We raised a $200 million commitment from a private equity sponsor in 18, built some gathering in 19, and ended up exiting that investment at the end of 19, which ended up being good timing because of COVID. COVID made things really slow on the midstream front, but then that's also what's forced us to learn other stuff. So we looked into like the energy transition, got smart there. We got smart. That's what brought us to the Bitcoin stuff. And then that's also kind of what pushed me to jump into the podcast and start using technology to leverage networking. And so even though COVID was a big downturn, it forced me to learn a bunch of other things, which I think has made me stronger as an entrepreneur.
I can completely echo kind of what you said. I mean, I remember before, in the times of COVID, I mean, you're right. It's one of those things where it's like, obviously I did very different things than you did, but we kind of skated along the same lines. It was kind of a time to not reinvent yourself per se, but it was a time to kind of try new things out, to whether that was getting your message out, whether that was networking, whether that was brand awareness for the company. It was definitely a time to kind of, for some people, to kind of just start getting out there in a different kind of way, in a different connecting with people in a different way, looking at new opportunities. Because during the pandemic, I mean, yes, it was horrible and all that stuff, but there were a lot of opportunities there if you change kind of your lenses and your kind of your focal points or your viewpoints, if you will.
Yeah, 100%. You got to evolve, right? I mean, it's like what the digital wildcatter guys say. It's like evolve or die. And it wasn't that we really changed our business necessarily. Even the Bitcoin stuff. I mean, look, we've created a career out of, monetizing energy and helping producers and stakeholders get the most value for their energy. This is just an extension of that. I mean, it really isn't anything.
Obviously, Bitcoin is one of those subjects. I'm sure people are kind of, they're seeing it every day in the news. That's a pretty good segue, actually. Bitcoin is something that's obviously, I feel like a lot of people know about. They've heard it, they've seen it, they did all that stuff. But the fact is, I think there's a disconnect with, and I think it's education, for people to understand it. If you were to give kind of the elevator summary on what Bitcoin is to you and why you got involved so heavily, and not only that, you're studying it, you're speaking about. You want to talk about the then we can go into that. But there's the Bitcoin meetup tomorrow in Oklahoma City that you're going to be attending and all that stuff. Tell me how, I guess, Bitcoin, because when I was talking to David Little, he mentioned that he got into it. He was researching during COVID, during the pandemic. When everything, when the shit hit the fan, he started looking into this. And I feel like it might be the same way with a lot of people. But if you can give us kind of an executive kind of summary on kind of why it's important to you and kind of how you're getting involved in it and why it's so important in the energy industry, especially the oil and gas industry.
Oh, it's a huge opportunity for the oil and gas industry and the energy industry as a whole. It's so surprising that there's really a lot of negative people about Bitcoin, especially on Twitter. It's like every time I post about it, you get people flooding in, kind of trolling that, saying that it's a bunch of negative stuff. And I'm like, look, you guys are oil and gas people. You guys are energy people. Like, take the time to study it and learn it. And what you'll find is that this is going to be a great thing for our industry. It already is. And I think that the way I found it was, talking to some miners that wanted to come in and buy natural gas and understanding their economics and saying, wait a second, you're converting gas that at the time gas has gone up, but at the time it was $253 and they could convert it to Bitcoin and they're making $30 or $35 an MCF equivalent by converting it to electricity in a generator. And so I just was like, this is fake. First of all, I was like, this can't be real.
Yeah.
This is kind of too good to be true. And then when I found out that it was real, that's when I started to say, okay, this can be really disruptive to what I do. I have to understand this. And at the core for me was like, why is it doing this? Why is it using all this energy? And I think that once I started to learn about that, that's when I realized that that this is a really powerful technology. And the way that I'll describe it, people want to think of it as like a token or money or a store of value. And it is all those things. But it's really to me, the most basic way to explain it is that Bitcoin's a network. It's kind of like the internet, but for money. And so the internet was built out and it was open source and it was a lot of different developers and people that were building out websites and doing all these things. Yeah. And it happened because entrepreneurs and innovators were able to come in and utilize new technology to be able to connect people. And it was primarily a connection through, communication. So whether that be sending emails or creating social media or all these things. And early on in the internet, there was no way to even comprehend what it was going to change, right? I mean, there's all these famous quotes about people saying that it was not going to have any bigger impact than the fax machine, that the fax machine was going to go down in the internet. And so the problem is that when something comes along that's so innovative and disruptive, like the internet, even the people that are experts on the internet, they couldn't have predicted what was going to happen. They had no idea because it is that disruptive. And that's kind of how I feel like with Bitcoin. It's like, even the people that are the experts on it, you can't predict how it's going to change things. And if you think about it, it's a way to connect and do all those things that the internet did, except it's with money. And so that at first, you don't seem like a big deal. But what I found out was that I didn't know all that much about money, really. I hadn't spent any time really thinking about it. You pull up your bank account.
And you go to the ATM, withdraw some stuff, and you go buy a burger.
You look at the numbers on the screen. And then as I started to learn more about money and its history, and then to learn also just about the current system. And so take, for example, if you have an E-Trade and you want to go trade a stock, well, if it's not during the certain times of the day, you can't move your money, right? Or even then, if you want to move your money out of E-Trade, it could take 3, 4, 5 days. If you have a financial advisor, probably similar. Even a regular bank account, if you want to move more than like a small amount of money around, there is a ton of layers involved and a ton of bureaucracy. It's very difficult to do that. And so we experienced that at like the Western world's equivalent, which for us is the easiest of almost anybody on the planet. There's billions of people that have virtually no access at all to a monetary system. And so for us, even with the people with the best access to it, it is very bureaucratic, a lot of red tape, very difficult. And so if you think about that, it's really hard to build things. It's really hard to innovate in a system where there are not just a couple gatekeepers, but sometimes dozens of gatekeepers just to do very simple things. And so, for example, if I wanted to send money to you, I could Venmo you. That may take, unless I want to pay a really high fee, that could take days for it to settle. It may take 3 days for it to even show up. The money disappears into the ether for 3 days, and then it may show up in your account. And then you got to do an ACH over back to your checking account. I mean, maybe a week or more. Right. Yeah, exactly. So there's like all this stuff in between, and who knows where that money goes. Then there's also the systemic risk around banking. And this is something that really shocked me. If you look back at like 2008, when Bitcoin was being invented, there was a period of time when right before they bailed out the banks that the money market almost collapsed. All these insurance companies, AIG and others had bought these, mortgage-backed securities, and they had these credit default swaps. And had the government not stepped in, I mean, people would have looked up and their savings would have been gone, because people that have money in money markets, that market could have collapsed. I mean, we were right on the brink of a serious major systemic issue because of all this bureaucracy, all this debt, all this legacy financial system. And I think what Bitcoin creates is a way to have access to your money. You can hold your money. I can send my money to you. There is no third party. There is no intermediary. And it's truly a system that is people owning the money.
Which I'm completely digging that. And obviously, I don't know about it as much as probably, I'm probably one of the people that don't know much about it at all, but it's the people's money, right? It decentralizes everything, kind of allows you to trade instantaneously with other people on this blockchain, whatever, all that buzzwords, the fiat money, all that. But the thing that I'm, obviously I don't, again, this might be a stupid question.
No questions are stupid. Bitcoin's confusing. Go ahead.
But the thing that I'm concerned about, and obviously is, the government, the government kind of getting involved and kind of putting their, fat, slippery, greedy fingers in and just kind of disrupting the entire process. I mean, is that something that kind of, that you have a response to, or that kind of like that you're monitoring or anything like that? I mean, that's my main concern is fat cats and, wherever they are, trying to come in and kind of pretty much, murk it up.
Well, they're going to, so they already are taxing it, and they like taxing it, right? They're going to continue to do that. When you mine Bitcoin, you get taxed. You get taxed again when you sell it. They're trying to already put things in place to where you have to report anytime you move it around. So they want to track it, and they want to tax you for it. I mean, I think that, that's a big thing. What you're going to see is you're going to see governments in the world that are going to adopt, or there places like the U.S., which is very, we have the best capital and legal systems in the world. We are the best free market capitalism country in the world, I would say. I mean, maybe someone would argue with me on that, but I think that places like the U.S. should embrace Bitcoin. I think there are people at the highest levels of government, senators, House of Representatives, people at the state level. I mean, look at what Texas is doing. I mean, Texas, you got Ted Cruz up here talking about it in detail about, why Bitcoin mining matters, all the benefits that it can provide. You've got the governor of Texas coming out. You've got senators in Wyoming, senators on the banking committee talking about the benefits of it. So I think you're going to see some places that value freedom and free markets and personal property rights. They're going to embrace this technology, and I think they already are. Other areas that don't like those things, that want to have government controlling all those things, they're going to push back. I mean, we've seen New York already float some legislation. It wasn't serious, but it floated maybe banning Bitcoin mining already. Areas are already starting to attack it. And
China,
so I think,
a couple months ago.
Yeah, that's a great example of how resilient the network is. China banned Bitcoin mining. Close to half or over half the network was based in China. We saw the hash rate, which is effectively just how big the network is, how much computing power, drop off 50%, and we're already back in 6 months' time to a new all-time high on the computing network. So Bitcoin will gravitate towards places in the world with freedom, with personal property rights, and where there's capitalism, and it will go to those places. And there is always going to be opponents of any new technology, right? Like, look at the internet. There's still places that people are trying to restrict it. There's still countries that shut the internet off because they don't want people messaging. This Kazakhstan deal, when they had all the riots, the first thing they did is they shut the internet off. So governments do not like when there are new disruptive technologies that give people more freedom that can circumvent their legacy systems. The reality is that that's the way that the world is moving, and that I think that the governments that embrace those types of things will be rewarded. And like the U.S. has been with the technology boom that we've had over the last 20 years. Look at where all the innovative technologies are coming out of the U.S. because we've embraced this technology. We've embraced it, whereas other countries have. China, they just basically copy what we do. They go and they take intellectual property and then they redo it because they can't do it there because none of the innovators and free thinkers are going there. They're coming here. Right. So I think that'll be how it is with Bitcoin. And I mean, look, could the government take a hard stance on it at some point in the future? Maybe. I mean, look, they confiscated the gold back in the 30s. They didn't. And that's the thing with Bitcoin. Everyone's like, it's not backed by anything. It's all this stuff. It's like, there's been other things, for hundreds of years. We had a monetary system based on gold, which wasn't backed by anything. It was just a physical thing that had certain properties that people valued. And so I think with Bitcoin, it's got certain properties that people value. You can control it, you can own it, I can send it, nobody can censor it, right? And so those are the reasons why people are gravitating towards it. And is there speculation in Bitcoin? Sure. There's speculation in every market. And you talked about like these big price movements. I mean, I think that Bitcoin is, whether people call it uncorrelated, the reality is it's correlated to technology. At some degree. So you see a big pullback recently in like a lot of these tech stocks. You're seeing the threat of the Fed raising rates. That's caused kind of what we've seen in the depression of Bitcoin prices. But you got to zoom out. I mean, this is $1 trillion asset. It's the fastest asset ever to $1 trillion. I mean, it beat Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, all of them. And this is something that is totally organic. It's just people doing it. And so the reason why that it functions the way that it does is because of energy. And we can talk about that, but that's what got me. I love I'm like a conservative / kind of libertarian. So I love this idea of, freedom money, right? Capitalist money. But that kind of came later for me. what came first for me was understanding that energy is at the center of all of this, and that's what got me really excited.
So when it comes to, like, obviously there's news about the dip, the Bitcoin losing value and all that stuff, and people are panicking and all that stuff. To you, this is just a long game. This is like, look, I'm not going to watch the daily fluctuations. I believe in this. I believe in it's a finite resource. I believe it's $1 trillion right now. And so these fluctuations in the market, you're not really sweating. It's kind of the nature of any kind of market like this.
I don't trade stocks. I mean, I've gotten heat on Twitter for this before too. Like, I posted something saying that I couldn't name 10 stock tickers, which was cheeky and not true. I actually could name them when I thought about it, because people were calling me out. But like, I don't follow. My biggest pet peeve is when people post something and they just put like the little dollar sign and then the ticker, because I don't know any of them. And so I literally am just like, you just said something that might as well be Chinese, because I'm not going to spend the time to go look this up. Because I don't pay attention to that stuff. It might as well be another language to me. Like, I don't look at tickers, and I'm not a speculative guy. Like, I don't go out there and I don't trade. I don't day trade. I don't bet on stocks. I mean, all my stuff is managed in it's all in, like index funds, and I don't really pay attention to it. For Bitcoin, I'm not looking at it like, hey, I'm going to buy at 40 and then I'm going to sell at 60. Right. I'm literally looking at it as an insurance policy and stuff that I look at it as like property. Like, if you bought
your purchasing power.
Yeah, it's like if you bought a piece of land, you buy it, you don't check the value of your land every day. You're not like, oh no, land prices went down. No, you bought that piece of land, so in 30 years you have a piece of land still, and that everything else is going to inflate. And so with Bitcoin, I don't even keep mine on exchange, so I can't even see what it's worth. I'd have to get out a calculator and calculate what it's worth. So I'm not watching these prices. It excites me when it drops, because we are doing Bitcoin mining, and the price of the computers fluctuates with the price of Bitcoin. So we're hoping this year to launch a bunch of new deployments. And if we can buy those computers at a cheaper price, that's a positive. So if it goes to, even lower than it is today, we're going to continue to buy ASIC computers and help oil field guys buy them as well. And so that's something we're really trying to bring this service to the oil field. A lot of the legacy Bitcoin companies are tech focused, or they're from a different industry. I feel like the oil and gas industry needs oil and gas people to talk to them about this, and to give them a reliable supply chain person, and someone who they can talk to that knows this industry in and out when they need advice. And so that's what we're trying to help with. We're trying to help more producers have access to these computers, have access to the data centers, generators, and be able to do it on their own. And I think as each guy dips their toe in and starts to learn it, I think they're going to find out that this is a really interesting and alternative way to monetize their production.
You know what's interesting? So you're kind of, I feel like the people that are passionate about Bitcoin, I'm calling it a passion. You know what I mean? You're not attending the Bitcoin meeting tomorrow in Oklahoma City. You're not flying to Miami for the Bitcoin conference. You're not studying Bitcoin and talking about it so much unless you're passionate about it. But, the other person I spoke to that kind of, has this kind of the same feelings towards is, again, that I'm going to bring it up again, that David Little. And he mentioned very similar stuff to you. Number one, he's passionate about it because he studies what is money. A lot of people don't know what is money. And another thing is that it might be just the term of it, Bitcoin. So people assume that it's like a tangible thing and go in a store and pay. Yes, you can be able to do that, but it's more of a you're right. It's more like a real estate. It's more of like a you don't as you said, you don't check the price of your real estate every day. It's one of those things where it's like, you just got to understand it and then just kind of bet on it. It's not really betting on it. It's just kind of investing in kind of this limited resource.
I almost look at it as it's like a hybrid between real estate and between money, because people will say, oh, it's all based on the US dollar and, it's pegged to the dollar. But to me, it's like, we're going to see things, I believe, in the future be priced in Bitcoin. I mean, we already are seeing some things. And so I think that if you look at it as a form of money, it is volatile today. A lot of that's driven by the derivatives and, speculation market. But I think over time, as the adoption grows, that price will stabilize and you will see people trading with it, using it as for commerce. And it's already happening. So, again, it's like, I'm not saying I don't ever tell people to go invest in anything. I think that, what I've told people that ask me for advice on it, I say, just buy a little bit and sit on it and learn about it. I think learning about it is the key. I would read, the Bitcoin Standard's a great intro book. I've tried to do a couple of talks where I break it down. Really the energy usage is at the center of it. By using the energy, that is what validates, shows that the transactions are valid. And so you don't have to have a custodian like an Amazon or a Google upholding this network. You have people that are entrepreneurs upholding the network, like myself and others. that want to run these miners because they want to do it. They get rewarded. They get paid for upholding the network. And they have to. The only way you can uphold a network is to expend energy. And so people say it's not backed by anything. It's backed by energy. The network is upheld by energy, and that makes it to where you can't forge it. And so that allows it to be decentralized, and it's really the energy usage is the secret sauce. And it's a great news for energy producers and people that are in the energy industry and people that are really hating on this and want to rip on it. Just take some time to learn it, because if you're in the energy space, I think you should be embracing it. And I got to the point where it's like, I'm putting out all this educational stuff on it. I don't have to sit here and argue on Twitter anymore about it. I'm trying not to. I mean, I have educational content out there. I talk to these people, they haven't watched the educational stuff. They just want to argue. There was a great tweet. There's a great tweet the other day. It said like, I retweeted it. It was a screenshot. Someone was like, defend your position on this thing you tweeted. And the person said, I met you, dude, like 10 seconds ago, and I haven't liked any of those 10 seconds. I don't need to go do a homework assignment for you. You've got Google. Like, like if people don't like it, people want to just talk crap on it on Twitter all the time. And I'm like, just go research about it. And if you still don't like it, then that's fine. But I don't know. I believe in it because I've spent the time on it, I guess.
Okay, no, and that's the thing, though. And I kind of dig how you're kind of you're trying to educate others on it. And I think education, whether it's Bitcoin, I think that's something that's not I guess we're focused on in this day and age. People want to come to assumptions based on a headline or based on what their friends say. But education, or educating yourself about the subject, I think is a tool that not a lot of people do. So I really dig that you're doing that. I want to shift gears with you for a little bit. I know we've been talking about this a little bit. Yeah. It seems like you've got several things, kind of key things that's kind of on your peripheral for now, right? The first one's obviously Bitcoin that we just kind of went over. And the next one that you kind of that you're talking about is, number one, it's kind of like the supply chains issue, but you're also kind of correlating that to kind of what's going on in the Europe market right now with their energy transition, their energy prices, shutting down, the nuclear power plant when they're facing the worst, energy supply winter, and it's blackouts, no hot water and stuff like that. So you're very vocal about kind of what's going on. Are there a lot of similarities right now with what's going on with Europe and kind of what's going on in the U.S. right now?
I think that what I've been focused on mainly is Europe, but also what the situation there. And I think the reason why is because it's showing you what bad energy policy can lead to. I mean, Germany is just shutting down another nuclear plant recently, and yesterday there was across the headlines that 300,000 people didn't have power in Berlin. So you've got just this terrible energy policy. They have not invested in the technologies that the U.S. has invested in, like horizontal drilling and hydraulic fracturing. They have, there are gas resources, oil resources in Europe that has been not exploited. They haven't learned that technology. They haven't secured energy independence, or not even independence, just energy security through having reliable baseload. And that's fine if you want to, not have natural gas. But if you want to not have natural gas and you want to not have nuclear and you want to not have coal, then you're leading to a place where you're going to be cold and dark. I mean, that's just what it is. Like, renewables only work when they work. And so this isn't necessarily a knock on renewables. It is a knock on bad policy, and it's educating, again, people. And so what I've been focusing on is, past energy transitions, what has happened, what's going on with the current one. And I'm an outward, I want to be more vocal about our industry. And I think when I first started with the content with the podcast, I was very hesitant and nervous to be as outspoken about oil and gas because it's so negative in the public, right?
I've seen your message, and I've see you seem to be getting more vocal, making more statements that I'm digging. I'm digging.
Somebody has to. And I know that the good that we provide in the world, right? Like there's a lot of like fake news out there, right? Like this idea that we're going to get away completely from fossil fuels. Like it's just not reality. Like the 4 pillars of modern society are concrete, steel, plastic, and ammonia. And so concrete and steel, that's going to be all your buildings, all your transportation, planes, cars, trains, all these things, manufacturing, the industries that we have, all the supply chain, all this stuff. Those are concrete and steel. You can't make those without fossil fuels. Plastic, this is everything we do. It's the internet, it's this computer, it's your phone, it's all these things. It's your, the tires on your car. You can't make those without fossil fuels, and you never will be able to. And this is, 90+% of everything you interact with on a daily basis. And then the last one's ammonia. So it's fertilizer, right? Like there is no way to support 7 or 8 billion people without fossil fuels. Prior to this, you can run the math. You would need an exponential growth in farming and the amount of land use. You could use all the available land we have, and you still would be able to barely support 1 billion people without using fertilizer. And so without these 4 pillars of modern society, we really don't, humanity just doesn't exist the way it does today. And if you can take a graph of, when we started using fossil fuels and you look at population, they both start shooting up at the same time. It's 1-for-1 correlated. Fossil fuels have created the ability for us to flourish and grow as humanity. And then every day, constantly, I'm just hearing the demonization of these fossil fuels. And then people saying that they're going to go away. They're not going to go away.
No,
those four things cannot be made without fossil fuels.
So my question is do you see that the U.S. Energy policies and everything that's kind of been, do you see this kind of following the footsteps of what's been going on in Europe right now? How far away are we from that?
I think the key differentiator here, and the reason why we're really fortunate in the U.S. is that we have 2 things, or one main thing is, and that is that private citizens own our energy, right? Like we're one of the only places in the world where a rancher can own the mineral rights,
right,
or a company can own mineral rights, right? And then you have private companies that are now being able to drill on those mineral rights. Like, think if the government owned everything like they do in some of these BLM or these places like in New Mexico and some of these states. I mean, they could just shut it off like they've done in Europe and some of these other places. And I think we would be in a very bad situation if we didn't have the right for personal property rights for the resources. So I think that's what set up the U.S. not only to continue to lead in this space, but it's also the reason why we've had so much innovation, right? I mean, it gets back to the Bitcoin thing. When you have the ability for people to have open access to a resource, and Bitcoin in that instance, it's the ability to build that network, and the energy is the ability to find and exploit these reserves. Whenever you have free market capitalism combined with the best legal system in the world, that is a breeding ground for innovation. And so what the U.S. has done is we have innovated and we have completely changed the world. People don't want to think about oil and gas workers or these, oil field workers as innovators. We're every bit of as innovative and disruptive as Silicon Valley. And in fact, what we do touches more than probably Google, which sounds crazy, but energy is life. Energy is everything. And so 15, 20 years ago, they said we were out of energy. We couldn't get any more natural gas out of the U.S. It was common wisdom that this was a problem that could not be solved. We solved it. And not only did we solve it, we unlocked hundreds of years of energy for our country. And so we're going to be set up to be a prosperous country because the base level of everything is energy. Now we've messed some things up too, right? Like we've demonized the coal industry. Instead of focusing on responsible ways and sustainable ways to produce coal, we've basically made it to where coal mining is going out of business here. We can't get access to it. Well, guess what that does? That makes it to where we're not competitive with steel. But we're not competitive with steel. We're not competitive with making automobiles and making buildings and doing all those other things. So the ripple effects with energy, whenever you just eliminate the ability to produce and to have energy, it will affect everything in your economy. And there's a reason why we're moving towards, a service economy versus manufacturing, is because we've limited our ability to do things like mining in this country. We can't hardly mine. And guess what? The energy transition, it's all mining, right? So we've made it to where we can't compete in that space. Yet now the U.S. is wanting to pivot to where we will rely completely on countries like China and other countries that don't have the ESG standards that we have. And so I'm not saying the policies here are perfect. In fact, I think what we've done has been despite the policies. It's really been more because we have this system and framework with personal property rights for minerals, as well as the innovation and the free market capital structure that we have. So we'll see. I think we continue to be competitive, but we gotta be vocal that we need to keep it up.
This is kind of, and obviously we've been talking for a little bit now, so we can kind of wrap up here a little bit, but I'm kind of curious about, the people in Germany, the citizens in Germany, wherever they are, that have, no power, no electricity, no hot water, freeze and all that stuff. Do you see, and I don't see it, I don't see people kind of going back to the drawing board and saying, hey, what we did doesn't work. Do you see kind of maybe any change or kind of working back to kind of have the and you obviously, I'm not asking you to speak for Germany or any country in Europe or anything like that, but like if something gets to that point where it's so far down the road where it is affecting people's life, where bills are 300% higher than they were before, people do you see things kind of reverting back, or policies reverting back to say, okay, well, we win it, with all this virtue signaling, with all this, marketing of, green energy, renewable, whatever, it cannot withhold the energy needs or requirements of our country to continue flourishing or even operating. do you see kind of people going back and kind of potentially, I mean, let's say it happens in the U.S., stuff like that, kind of like going backwards and kind of fixing the issues at hand, and kind of, instead of the energy transition happening overnight, being spread out through X number of years? Does that make sense?
It's going to have to be spread out because the supply chain can't support these, going to all renewable. And not only can we just, it's not feasible to go to all renewables, it's that supply chain wise, we don't have the mining capacity to go to where a lot of these targets have been set. It's just not feasible. And by the way, they keep talking about how energy or renewables are cheap. Well, guess what happens when you raise a bunch of demand and supply can't keep up? The price goes up.
Yeah.
So I think that it's getting more expensive to make these renewables, and you're going to need a lot of mining, a lot of coal, ironically, to make these solar panels and windmills. And it's going to be difficult. I think that elections have consequences, and that hopefully the people that are in these areas that are having blackouts realize that it's important who you put in charge of your energy policies. I think that, governments right now aren't backtracking. Europe's now talking about just giving people stimulus money to pay their electric bills. So they're like doubling down. They're like, oh, we'll just support this. They're also talking today, it came out that they're going to start punishing the energy companies now because they're making windfall profits. It's their fault that this is happening. So I don't know that politicians rarely, if ever, I would say almost never take responsibility when they do things bad. I name 5 times that politicians come out and say, I made a terrible decision here by this policy.
Yeah.
They don't do that. So they are going to continue to push these things forward. But I think it's up to people with the ballot box in places where there are free democracies to push back on this and to put people into place that understand energy. This railroad commission, election is even at a smaller scale. I mean, as Texas goes, it has an impact on the energy industry as a whole in the U.S. And so when you think about a candidate, think about someone who actually understands the issues and is going to do things that make sense versus somebody that's a good talker and a good politician, because they may not have the background. They may make policies that don't end up being what's best for the industry or for the country.
So question. So you're obviously an oil and gas or energy advocate, right? And you made a tweet, and I completely dig this tweet. You said that no energy is clean energy. And I think that is such a great conversation. It's such a great point. That's something that I brought up on my podcast too. It's like renewables have done green energy has done such a great job marketing, right? No one, everyone thinks, windmills up, it's all good. But the fact is, or whether it's, that or Tesla or something like that, there is no clean energy because every source of energy does require some sort of dirt, whatever you want to call it. And I really do think those are the discussions that we need to have. It's like, look, I understand the importance of renewables. I understand the importance of green energy and all that stuff. But at the same time, you have to speak to it factually versus an ideal mindset. And I really dig that the tweet you did.
You just got to look at the trade-offs. This is a Thomas Sowell quote that I love. And he said, there are no solutions, there are only trade-offs. At the end of the day, like, that is what we have right now. We have trade-offs. And so, do we want to move to a future where we can domestically supply our energy via the form of coal, natural gas, and oil and renewables? But with renewables, you got to remember, we can't supply these things. I mean, there's this irony that it's so dirty to mine that we can't do it in the US because they've made it so restrictive. Yet we have to do this thing that's so dirty to be able to go green. It's like, and then we're not even, when they look at the emissions reductions for renewables, they don't factor in any of that industrialization. I mean, think about how many.
Quick snapshot right there.
This one little snapshot. So I posted a thing yesterday. I said when it was like a meme with like Narnia, and I said, when renewables people were quoting me like half cycle economics, which basically just means they're taking a tiny sliver of, hey, when the sun's shining or the wind's blowing, look how good this renewable source of energy is. And it's like, no. Factor in all the mining, all the waste, all the, huge, heavy industrial machinery, everything that had to be done. You got to transport that over the ocean from China to the U.S. You then have to transport it and do all these things. I mean, there is just this massive footprint for renewables. And if we want to go to where these targets are by 2030 and 2050, it's going to be one of the largest industrial endeavors ever as humanity. If we want to switch over to these energy sources, none of that industrialization is being calculated in these emissions or CO2 calculations that they're showing for renewables. It's just intellectually dishonest. And so what I've always said is that if you are a business and you're promoting something saying that I'm better for the environment, but then you're not showing all the things about how you're negative for the environment,
you're lying.
seems a little unethical to me, to be honest. And the other thing that I always try to do, and I don't know if you notice this, is that when I'm advocating for natural gas, I always caveat it with, I work in this industry. This benefits me. I have a vested interest in selling this. When I talk to renewables people, and then people will call me out on that too, like on Twitter, they'll be like, oh, you're an oil and gas guy. That's why you were pushing this. I'm like, yeah, I am. Like, I do this and this is my job. I don't see that on the other side. I see this, hey, buy my product because the world's ending, or whatever fear thing they want to push. And then at the end, it's like, oh, and by the way, like, I sell that. It's like they're pushing it forward because they're making money off of this. I'm not saying that all these initiatives are bad. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, let's just be honest about the trade-offs. Like, back to that quote that I said at the beginning.
So Max, we can wrap this up and kind of open it up. But what I really dig about you and respect about you, and I like having open, honest conversations about energy versus pro oil field. You know what I mean? Like, right. The whole, drill baby drill mindset and all that stuff. Like, that's to me, having honest conversations about energy. Like, my someone close to the family, I'm not going to call them out here. I got in this conversation with them too. It's like, oh, how come we just can't switch over, end fossil fuels, end this? I'm like, well, that, the medicine that you're taking, like, you wouldn't be having that with that. Like, I understand but have you ever seen the mining for some of these solar panels or some of these batteries and all that stuff? So it's kind of like having these, like, just having conversations. I mean, it's collective educating conversations that I enjoy having with people versus kind of the camp mentality conversations. And I think that's probably more important for our industry to start having with people outside our industry than anything right now.
Yeah, I think it's critical. I think you got to have the discussion. And that's why I get so worked up about free speech too. I mean, I think that it's a slippery slope. I think we need to be promoting open dialogue. And I said it the other day, I tweeted, I said, if somebody is censoring a discussion point, then they don't care about truth, because the only way to know what's true and what's false is to hear both sides. Even if one of those sides is what they're saying is wrong, or even if you think that it's a bad talking point, like I know COVID's gotten a bunch of censorship. Even if you think, oh, this is dangerous, we can't hear their opinion. It's like, well, if you can't hear all the opinions, how do you know what's true?
Yeah.
So I think that it's critical to be able to listen to the discussions on both sides, make up your own mind. But we are unfortunately moving to a world where they don't want you to hear, and by they, I mean big tech and everybody else. I mean, both sides, they don't want the other person to have a voice. And I think everybody needs to have a voice, and we need to have a critical discussion and then make up our own minds on these issues.
Big tech and pharma. That's right. Duncan McAllister chimed in. He said, David Cameron resigned following the Brexit referendum since he believed this to be his mistake. But that's the only politician I can think of.
Yeah, that's it. That's one. There you go. There's been some. I mean, you get caught in a scandal, then or something happens bad where it's like, right, you have to. But for the most part, a lot of times, they're not being like, oh, that renewable policy that we pushed forward made everybody's power prices go up. They're not going to admit that.
They're trying to get a fall guy so they can continue their political career. But does anyone have any questions for Max? And obviously, you can reach Max out. You can reach out to him on LinkedIn to kind of just connect with him. And he's up in Oklahoma City, right?
Yep, OKC.
By the way, I love me some OKC, buddy.
No, it's a good place.
One time I went up there, you were in Austin. You came down to Austin.
I was going to bring that up earlier. How was that? How did that event go?
Dude, it was really, really good. So I went up to Oklahoma City in the middle of December for part of the Crew Club tour, if you will. And it was the first time I was in Oklahoma. And I love that city. I think the vibe is cool. The energy, the people are amazing. The petroleum club was great. Like, I stayed at that haunted hotel, the Skirverkin, whatever it's called. I had my Uber driver, Bryson, right here. Great conversation. Have a great day. You too, Bryson. I had him, drive me around. I'd have him, but he offered. He was such an awesome guy. But it was a really great time. I'll be going up there October 20th. All right. That's a Thursday for a Crew Club event.
October 20th?
What month is it? January. Sorry. Good catch, though. January 20th. Yeah. First off, I don't know what I'm doing 2 weeks from now, so I'm not planning months out.
Like, bro, I was like, you got these scheduled out till October? I was like, you're on
schedule's legit. No, it's not. January 20th, I'll be going up to Oklahoma City. So again, if you're tuning in and operating all that stuff, want to expand your network, reach out to me, JP at connectioncrew.com. Oh, we have James came by. I had lunch with James. That OKC Crew Club event was awesome. It was a great time. It was good because it was like, it was pretty much an open, come on by, let's do a little meet and greet, hear about Crew Club, or just meet some good people. And we had a pretty good turnout. I'd say probably about 15, 20 people showed up throughout the night. And then It was just a good time. It was a good time. And I'll be back. I'll be making some more trips to Oklahoma City, which I'm excited about.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on, man. This has been fun. We'll do some more content soon.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll be seeing you 2 weeks if you're up there.
Sweet. I should be here. What date is it? 20th?
Thursday.
20th?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be back. I'll be on the I'll be in Montana till the 19th. I'll be back the 20th. So hit me up, dude. I'm going skiing. I'll be excited about it.
Well, that should be a good time. You going with family?
Yeah, my wife and I were gonna get away and go. Be good.
Nice. Okay. All right. Well, dude, I guess we'll be in touch, and I'll see you in 2 weeks.
All right. Sweet, man. Thanks, JP, for having me on.
Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. We'll talk to y'all soon. And also be sure to tune in tomorrow with Sarah Stogner, the Texas Railroad Commission. That's at 10:15 a.m. And then on Wednesday, Casey Zachary, Summit Petroleum at 9 a.m. It's going to be a good time, both ones. So we'll talk to everyone soon. Have a great Monday. And Max, thanks for coming on, brother. We'll talk to you in a little bit.
Yeah, JP. Talk to you soon. See you.